Kingshill Colliery in Lanarkshire is a new downcast shaft winding some 1,500 tons of coal a day. The entire output goes for processing to Kingshill number 1, 2 miles across the moor. The output from number 3 is wound in 2.5-ton mine cars. Their handling is completely mechanized. At number 3 pit bank, a 4-ton electro-hydraulic traverser has been installed. Driven by a 12-horsepower motor actuating 2 oil hydraulic motors through an auto pump, the traverser picks up 1 empty car at a time from the return track, moves across to either cage, and rams in the empty. The action of ramming in an empty car automatically expels the full car from the cage. The claw on the ram is spring-loaded and automatically engages the buffer on the mine car. When the car is pushed into the cage and the ram is nearly at the end of its stroke, the claw is released as the plunger passes over the disengaging ramp. The plunger passes over the ramp. The claw is released from the mine car. The driver cannot release the power-operated keps until the engine man clears his signalling. Controls are operated directly from the cab and duplicated at each cage. Leaving the cage, the full cars run by gravity over a weighbridge not yet in use to the clipping-on station, where they attach themselves to the haulage rope. With a car off the track for maintenance, you can see in detail how the clipping jaws operate. The cast steel jaws with renewable liners are closed over the rope by the operating arm, which is depressed as it rolls under a ramp at the side of the track. Considerable leverage is needed to overcome the spring loading of the operating arm. The springs you can see on either side of the jaws are there to take up the shock of clipping on the rope. The whole attachment can be fixed to a standard mine car frame. The jaws remain open until they embrace the rope. They are then closed firmly as the operating arm is forced down by an overhead ramp. From number 3 pit bank, the full cars move off on their 2-mile journey across country to Kingshill number 1, passing the returning empties on their way. The haulage rope moves at a steady 3 miles an hour. Power comes from 2 electric motors of 75 and 150 horsepower, which can be used singly or together according to weather conditions. Only 3 men are needed to operate the entire system. A man to operate the traverser at each pit bank, and 1 man to watch and maintain the track. The haulage rope passes over 10-inch diameter ball-bearing rollers mounted on angle iron frames attached to the sleepers. At Kingshill number 1, the cars are clipped off the haulage by reversing the clipping on procedure, and the shock of the falling rope is taken up on a wheel. The full car coasts down to the tipping station, where a similar traverser to that at number 3 pit bank is used. The claw on the ram engages the loaded car buffer and draws it slowly onto the carriage. The loaded car is moved over and rammed into the tippler, when once again the ram is automatically disengaged. As the traverser moves across with a full tub, a hinged arm on the chassis moves freely over a switch. But as the traverser moves back, the switch is tripped and the tippler starts up. The tippler cannot start until the traverser moves off. The traverser cannot move off until the ram has been retracted and the car is safely inside the tippler. A full car is rammed into the tippler and pushes the now empty car out. The empty car runs out of the tipping station by gravity, clips itself onto the return rope and sets off back to Kingshill number 3. At present, coal is wound at Kingshill number 3 one shift a day. But this system, conceived and developed for 2 Scottish collieries, is capable of continuous operation. Here is a good example of how mechanization on a pit top, combined with endless rope haulage, can give good service with a startling reduction of manpower.